the reunion hall was warm and bright. Lights sparkled across the ceiling like small stars. Laughter filled every corner of the room. Old friends hugged each other tightly. Expensive perfume mixed with the smell of fine food. Everyone looked polished, successful, and proud, everyone. Except one man standing near the door. His name was Daniel. He wore a simple button-up shirt, slightly wrinkled at the collar. His shoes were clean but old. His watch was nothing special. He stood alone, holding a glass of water, quietly watching the room. Nobody walked toward him. Nobody called his name with a warm smile. A few people glanced at him, then looked away. That look said everything. That look said, "What is he even doing here?" Daniel felt it. He always felt it, but he stayed because, somewhere across this noisy, glittering room, he still believed he belonged. Then the laughter got louder near the center table. Someone pointed at him. Then the whole table turned to look, and just like that, the room felt very, very small. Daniel took a slow breath. He set his glass down carefully. He had practiced this moment in the mirror at home. He told himself he was ready. But no mirror could prepare him for this. A man named Marcus walked toward him. Marcus wore a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. His cufflinks caught the light as he moved. His smile was wide. But it was not warm. It was the kind of smile that wanted an audience, and tonight, Marcus had one. "Daniel," Marcus said loudly, opening his arms like they were old friends. "Man, I almost didn't recognize you." Daniel shook his hand. "Good to see you, Marcus." Marcus looked him up and down slowly, not quickly, slowly, the kind of look designed to make a person feel invisible. "So what are you doing these days?" Marcus asked. His voice carried across the nearby tables. Heads turned, conversations paused. "I work at a logistics company," Daniel said quietly. "Logistics?" Marcus repeated the word like it tasted strange. A few people nearby laughed softly. Daniel felt the heat rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He had learned a long time ago how to keep his face calm. "I also raise my daughter," Daniel added. Marcus tilted his head with fake sympathy. "Oh right, she left you, didn't she?" The words landed like stones. The table went quiet for a different reason now. Not because they felt sorry for Daniel, but because they wanted to see what he would do. Daniel said nothing. He simply nodded once. Marcus laughed and turned back to the group. "Well, some of us went into finance, real estate, started companies." He gestured around the table proudly. "And some of us are just surviving, I guess." More laughter, louder this time. Daniel stared at the floor for 1 second. Just 1 second. In that 1 second, he saw his daughter's face. He saw the morning she made him a birthday card from torn notebook paper. He saw the night she had a fever, and he sat beside her bed until sunrise. He saw every school run, every packed lunch, every bedtime story he read with tired eyes. He looked back up. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were steady, because those people laughing, they had no idea. They were measuring a man they had never truly known, and the most dangerous thing about Daniel was exactly that. Nobody in this room truly knew him. Not yet. The night wore on. The music played softer now. People moved between tables, sharing stories of promotions and vacations and new houses. Daniel stayed near the edge of the room. He refilled his water glass twice. He smiled politely when someone accidentally made eye contact, but mostly, he watched. He was good at watching. He had always been good at watching. Marcus, however, was not finished. He moved through the room like a man who needed everyone to see him winning, and every time he passed Daniel, he found a new way to remind the room of the contrast between them. "Daniel, did you ever get that car fixed?" he asked once, loud enough for 3 tables to hear. Another time, "Daniel, you should talk to Kevin. He runs a charity for single parents." Each comment came wrapped in a smile. Each one landed like a quiet punch. The group around Marcus laughed each time, not cruelly, or at least they told themselves it wasn't cruel. It was the kind of laughter that hides behind the word joke. Daniel absorbed every word, every glance, every whispered comment he was not supposed to hear but did. A woman named Claire leaned toward her friend near the dessert table. "I heard he gave up everything," she whispered. "For what?" her friend asked. "For a kid that isn't even She stopped herself, but the sentence had already been born. Daniel had heard it. He picked up a small dessert plate and moved away slowly. His hands were completely steady. That was the part nobody understood about Daniel. His hands were always steady, even the night his wife packed her bags and walked out without looking back. Even the morning he carried his crying 2-year-old daughter to a neighbor's house, because he had no one else to call. Even the day he signed the papers that ended everything he thought his life would be. His hands had always been steady, because somewhere deep inside Daniel lived a discipline that most people never develop. A discipline built not in comfort, but in pressure, built in darkness, built in silence, built in a version of himself that this room full of polished, laughing people had never seen. Marcus raised his glass from across the room. To success, he announced grandly. Everyone raised their glasses. Daniel raised his water glass too, quietly, without a word, because he knew something the rest of the room did not. Success was not always loud. Sometimes it waited, and sometimes it walked through a door when nobody expected it. Then it happened. The main doors of the reunion hall opened, not quietly, but with the kind of weight that makes a room shift. A cold draft moved through the warm air. The music seemed to lower itself out of respect. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Every head turned toward the entrance. And there he stood, a man in full military dress uniform. His jacket was heavy with metals that caught the light, like quiet fire. His posture was so straight it seemed architectural. His eyes were sharp and calm. The eyes of a man who had seen things most people only read about. He was not young, but he carried himself like someone who had earned every single year on his body. 2 officers stood slightly behind him. He did not need an introduction. His presence was the introduction. Marcus straightened his tie instinctively. Claire put down her dessert fork. Someone near the back of the room whispered, "Who is that?" The general stepped fully inside. He removed his cap, slowly, and held it at his side. His gaze moved across the room. Methodical, unhurried. The way a man looks at a space when he is searching for something specific. He passed the welcome table without stopping. He passed the organizer who stepped forward to greet him. He walked past Marcus and his tailored suit and his expensive cufflinks, without a single glance. The crowd parted naturally as he moved. Not because anyone asked them to, but because some people carry an energy that simply moves the world around them. And then he stopped. The general stopped walking, right in front of Daniel, the man who had been standing alone all evening near the edge of the room, the man with the wrinkled collar, and the old shoes and the water glass. The room held its breath. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The general looked at Daniel for one long, still moment, and then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and he saluted him, not a casual gesture, a full, formal, deeply respectful military salute. "Sir," the general said. His voice was low, but the room was so silent that every single person heard it clearly. Daniel looked at him. And for the first time all evening, truly smiled. If you have been feeling what Daniel has been feeling tonight, that quiet pain of being misunderstood, drop a Teltfer in the comments right now. Because this story is far from over. The silence in the room was thick. Nobody laughed now, nobody whispered, nobody reached for their glass or their fork or their phone. They just watched. Marcus stood completely still for the first time all evening. His confident smile had disappeared somewhere between the general's entrance and that single word. "Sir." The general lowered his salute slowly. But he did not step back. He stood beside Daniel the way a man stands beside someone he trusts completely. Someone nudged someone else near the back table. A woman covered her mouth quietly. The organizer, who had tried to greet the general at the door, now stood frozen near the welcome table, forgotten and confused. Then the general spoke again, not loudly, but with the kind of clarity that fills a room without effort. "I have walked into rooms on 4 continents, he said. "I have stood in places where the air itself felt dangerous." He paused, "and I have never, not once, met a man braver than the one standing beside me right now." The room stirred, a quiet, uncomfortable stirring, because those words did not match the man they had been laughing at all evening. Marcus opened his mouth slightly, then closed it again. The general turned fully toward the room now, his metals caught the light again as he moved. 15 years ago, he began, I was a young officer on a mission that went wrong very quickly. His voice was steady but something behind his eyes was not. We were surrounded, we were outgunned, and we were losing men. The room was perfectly still. One commanding officer refused to leave. The general's jaw tightened slightly. He stayed behind to cover our retreat. Alone, in complete darkness. He stopped speaking for a moment, just long enough for the weight of those words to settle into every corner of the room. He saved 11 lives that night. Another pause, including mine. Someone near the dessert table exhaled slowly. Claire's eyes had gone glassy. Even Marcus had stopped adjusting his cufflinks. The general placed his hand firmly on Daniel's shoulder. He never told anyone. The general continued quietly. He just came home, and became a father. Daniel looked at the floor for one brief moment, the same way he had looked at the floor earlier that evening. But this time, it was different. This time, it was not shame pulling his eyes downward, it was something much quieter, much deeper, it was the weight of a life fully lived. Finally being seen. If you never knew the quiet ones carried the heaviest stories, type silent hero in the comments. And if you are new here, subscribe now. Because this story is about to break your heart wide open. The room had changed completely. It was the same hall, the same sparkling lights, the same tables and chairs and expensive perfume in the air. But something fundamental had shifted inside every person standing in it. Marcus looked at his cufflinks now like they embarrassed him. Claire had quietly moved away from the dessert table. The group that had laughed the loudest was now the quietest corner in the room. Nobody knew where to look, because the truth has a way of doing that. It walks into a room, and it rearranges everything. The general shook Daniel's hand firmly. A long, meaningful handshake between two men who shared something no reunion hall could ever fully contain. I looked for you, the general said quietly, just between them now. After everything, I looked for you. Daniel nodded slowly. I know, he said simply. I just needed to disappear for a while. The general studied his face carefully, the way people look at someone they genuinely worried about for a long time. Are you all right? He asked. Daniel thought about the question honestly. He thought about his small apartment with the leaky kitchen faucet. He thought about the parent-teacher meetings he attended alone. He thought about the Saturday mornings he and his daughter made pancakes together, and she always put too many chocolate chips in the batter. He thought about her laugh, that specific laugh, loud and unfiltered and completely fearless. Yeah, Daniel said softly, I really am. And he meant it, every single word of it. The general smiled then, a rare smile, the kind that lives mostly in the eyes. She must be something, he said. Your daughter. Daniel's whole face changed when he heard those words. The tension that had lived in his jaw all evening released. His shoulders dropped half an inch. His eyes went warm and distant at the same time, the way eyes go when a person thinks about someone they love more than their own life. She's everything, Daniel said. Across the room, people were watching this quietly. Not with laughter anymore. Not with judgment, with something closer to shame, and something even closer to admiration. Marcus stood near his table alone now. His group had drifted away in different directions. He looked at Daniel across the room. Daniel did not look back at him. Not out of anger. Not out of pride, simply because Marcus was no longer the most important thing in the room. He never really had been. The most important thing in Daniel's life was at home right now, probably asleep, with chocolate chip pancake batter still somewhere on her pajamas. And that simple, beautiful, ordinary truth, was worth more than every medal in the room. If this story is making you see someone differently tonight, someone you may have judged too quickly, drop their name or just a loot in the comments. You never know whose story you are carrying without knowing it. And make sure you hit that like button because Outline .07 is going to leave you completely speechless. The reunion ended quietly, not with a grand announcement or a final toast. Just slowly. The way evenings end when something real has happened inside them. People gathered their coats and their purses, and their car keys. They said their goodbyes in smaller voices than they had used all night. The sparkling lights above seemed dimmer now, or maybe everyone beneath them just felt more human, more honest, more aware of how little they actually knew about the people standing right beside them. Daniel shook the general's hand one final time near the door. "Come and meet her someday," Daniel said. The general smiled that rare eye smile again. "I will," he said firmly, "I absolutely will." They parted the way soldiers part, without too many words, because some bonds live deeper than words can reach. Daniel walked out into the cool night air alone. He stood beside his old car in the parking lot for a moment. He looked up at the sky. It was clear and wide, and full of quiet stars. He breathed in slowly, then breathed out everything the evening had carried. The laughter, the looks, the words that had been designed to make him feel small. He let all of it go into the night air, because none of it had ever truly touched the deepest part of him. That part belonged to someone else entirely. He drove home through empty streets. The radio played something soft and low. He parked outside his small apartment building, and sat in the car for just a moment. The kitchen light was on. His neighbor had been watching. His daughter, he could see the faint blue glow of the television through the curtain. He smiled to himself. He walked up the stairs slowly. He opened the door quietly. And there she was, asleep on the couch with a blanket pulled up to her chin. Her small face completely peaceful, her hair slightly messy the way it always was. By evening, one hand curled loosely beside her cheek. Daniel stood in the doorway for a long moment, just looking at her, the way parents look at sleeping children, like they are seeing the entire meaning of their life, summarized in one small, breathing person. He walked over carefully. He pulled the blanket up a little higher. He leaned down and pressed a kiss so gently to her forehead that she did not even stir. "I'd do it all again," he whispered. "Every mission, every sacrifice, every silent, painful, beautiful moment of it. All of it, for exactly this." For her, this was his greatest victory. Not the medals, not the general's salute, not the silenced laughter of people who never truly knew him. Just this. This small sleeping face, this ordinary extraordinary moment, this love, quiet, steady, and completely undefeated. If this story moved something inside you tonight, if it reminded you that real strength is often the quietest person in the room, please share this with someone who needs to hear it right now. Hit that subscribe button because every week we bring you stories that remind you what truly matters. And leave one word in the comments that describes Daniel. Just one word, because some stories deserve to end in silence, and some heroes deserve to finally be seen.